do you want to upgrade to version 3? Yeah, all right. Let's see what
Sure.
happens.
Let's
Let's hope that's okay. It looks
right.
okay. So
I
yeah, here
think
we
it's
go.
okay. I think we're looking
Yeah.
okay.
Anyway, welcome everybody to Brain Food Live on Air, bringing it to you every Friday, no fail. And it's a pleasure to be having this conversation with you. I hope you're enjoying sort of the rhythm as much as I do, because I kind of see Brain Food at the end of the week as a chance to just decompress. Let's review what's going on, and also it's kind of a little bit of a feeling of, okay, some of the probably the biggest stuff in the week's sort of being shipped now, and now it's just tidy up and hopefully looking forward to the weekend. Anyway, folks, I'm pleased to say Adam Gordon has again been upgraded because he's been upgraded to Mary Kay boss. And what's happened there? Oh my
Oh, well,
God.
that we briefly lost you there for a
I
second.
know, and I've gone kind of small there. I don't know why that is. So let me just go back on stage. So
There you go.
anyway, this is all new. This sort of I trusted the update, but we're going to go live on it. We're going to be okay. I'm off again.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
Maybe we're gonna be okay.
yeah, I don't think we are okay. I don't know what to do now. But all right, I'm gonna keep going like this. And Mary Kay, you're gonna have to introduce yourself real quick.
Hi. Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Mary Kay Baldino. I lead global talent acquisition for Morningstar, um, not the breakfast sausage company, the global investment data research company.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. I initially thought it was like a left-wing newspaper. I think in the UK the Morning Star is a pretty hard
Really?
left. Yeah.
There are a lot of companies named Morningstar. I see our name on a lot of things. We've had reviews left on our Glassdoor site from a cleaning company. So
There we
people don't
go.
like working for that Morningstar. So
Yeah, you got to take what you can. Okay. Anyway, Mary Kay, brilliant to see you here. And I can see actually there's some weirdness going on in the chats, but I think there may be
uh-oh.
a time delay on that. But let me just check firstly whether the audio visual is okay, folks. Can you hear me in the chat? If so, let me know. We should also be broadcasting this on LinkedIn, on several LinkedIns. So if you're watching this on LinkedIn, can you hear me okay? Thank you, Jung. Thank you, Rob. Jung, we're going to bring you on in a second. So, Ugnius, I hope that things have sort of resolved itself on the screen for you, and we're going to crack on. So, thank you very much, Jonathan. Okay, we're going to continue as is. Mary Kay, let's review the newsletter real quick. Did you read it last week? And if so, what was interesting for you?
I did. There is just so much chatter on our topic today. It seems like the only thing people want to talk about these days is AI. So I think I read your newsletter in part just to get the latest information on what is going on and what people are talking about. And I think today's conversation around Greenhouse's report is going to be really interesting. Trust
Yeah.
is a key theme.
It is. Like, what is trust exactly, and how is it eroding trust? How is AI impacting what we trust? I mean, I think all of us are now pretty much skeptics with regards to digital information. Like, we always have to catch ourselves when you see a video or an image, and we're no longer sure. Like, seeing is no longer
That's right.
believing.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, I'm actually I think this is a positive development, Mary Kay.
That people are more skeptical. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that digital literacy, like any other kind of media literacy, et cetera, is really, really important. And, I think there's a whole lot of AI literacy that's really, really necessary. At Morningstar, we launched an AI Academy for our employees last year. And it's really to teach people how to use AI in their everyday work, but also how to use it responsibly and ethically, how to like make sure you're checking for things like hallucination. So really important that people remain skeptical.
100%. It's a bit uncomfortable, isn't it? Because we
Yeah,
went through a period where we wanted to trust what people were saying. We wanted to trust the government. We wanted to trust the big newspapers, and that was the paper of record, etc. But I think what we just have to lean into the fact that we can't trust any of that. And we just have to deal with, okay, everything is just maybe not true, but we've got to just weigh it up as best we can, and use our own common sense, our own sense of values, and apply that to what we're being consumed or what we're being told to consume, and then
Sort
move
of
it
a
on from
trust
there.
but verify.
Correct. And that should be default. It's extra workload for us mentally, extra
For
workload,
sure.
but you got to embrace it because otherwise you're volunteering to be a sheep. Okay. What else was interesting from the newsletter last week, Mary Kay?
Um, oh, sorry. I really only have one thing I was going to talk about today. I can pull up the newsletter, Hung, but maybe we should go to someone in the chat.
No worries. Don't
No,
worry about it. I'll share the newsletter in the chat, and then people can
sure.
go and consume it themselves,
We should.
and take a review. But today, folks, we are going to be talking about a piece of research from our friends at Greenhouse, where they surveyed basically their customer base. And I think it's a really interesting set of conversations and key points that we're going to go through. So I don't see why not. Well, why we shouldn't bring Jung on screen now. Let me see if I can do that. And it's all very new for me. Give me a second, and we'll pick it up from there. Let's see how we go. There we go. We've got to move to the gallery. Is that correct? I have no clue. Okay, let's hope that works. Jung, I think you should be with us. I'm going to move you on stage. And I think people should see that. There should just be an unmute feature. Once you have the cameras being sort of checked out and stuff, we should be going well. By the way, folks, a question for you: have you read the sort of report? If you haven't, I thoroughly recommend you do. I will actually share the link to that report here again in the chat. So if you haven't sort of had a quick scan of this, please do take a look. There we go, into the crowdcast there. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, by the way, we're going to try and get it whipped over to you as well. But you can just hover over to Greenhouse's website and check it out and see it from there. Okay, let's see whether we can get Jung on. I'm not sure that's happening as well as we hoped it would be. Let's see whether we can remove again and try again. Oh, you requested permission. Oh, I don't know what that means exactly. Oh, gallery. Do I need to move to stage, move to audience? Oh, I've got to move to speaker. Let's do that. Can I do that? Save. There's some bugs to this, I'm afraid to say, which is preventing me from getting Jung on. That's just annoying.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got to move it back to audience. Let's do that. Gallery's empty. Jung, I'm going to invite you back on. And what I want you to do is simply just accept all of the pop-ups, basically. So don't try and like raise your hand or anything. There should just be a pop-up coming up on your screen now, which says you should be able to come on to the show. Let's do that. Move the gallery. Yeah, I think it's probably Adam's fault, to be honest. It should work as planned, but no, it doesn't seem to be doing the job. Move to audience. God damn. Oh, there she is.
Oh,
Did
hey,
that
there
work?
we go. Yay.
What magic did you pull, Jung? I didn't do a thing.
I think I had to clear some pop-up blockers, so hopefully that worked.
Oh, that did work. But yeah, great to see you, and thank you for getting up so early. I know it's like, I mean, I can see the candlelight in the background here. I know that the sun is not even up yet. So Jung, listen, why don't you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you, and what it is you do?
Great. I'm Jen McCann. I'm the Chief Legal Officer at Greenhouse Software. I've been there about 3 years and really enjoyed the journey that you all have seen around Greenhouse over these last few years.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And Joe, you've basically been kind of nominated as the person to talk through this piece of research that Greenhouse has performed. And I'd just be very interested, firstly, if you could give us a little bit of context as to the research, like what was the scope of it, who is it actually surveyed, when was it conducted, stuff like that.
Yes, sure. Thanks, Hung, and nice to see you, Mary Kay, as well. I mean, the research is not just greenhouse customers; it's candidates as well. So remember, there's thousands of job seekers that we reached out and to make sure that we
Mm,
understood both sides of the experience, from the hiring manager, recruiting, as well as job seeker side. And that's what I found super interesting about this research is when Mary Kay was talking about trust and how trust is important, particularly in the age of AI. I think it's interesting is trust is broken on both sides. Candidates are worried about the use of AI on the employer side, and employers are certainly seeing fraud, spam, and AI usage on the candidate side. So trust is broken on both sides.
yeah, that's folks. Do you agree with that? I mean, has your sense of trust kind of been eroded as a result of sort of the use of AI? So both sides, AI is essentially being fairly ubiquitously distributed now. I think anybody with an internet connection and with a computer probably can't get away with not using AI right now.
Mhm.
But it does completely change how we used to think about digital information. Like, can we trust a CV anymore, or a job application? Why should we trust job adverts? We never did, right? And so, what do we do with this type of trust crisis that we've got? A few insights. I don't know whether we want to share the report. Actually, I've basically, maybe this would be an idea. Just run through it, Jung. Let me see if I can do this, because I've actually got it up here. Ah, that seemed to work okay. Can I actually activate that? Brilliant. All right, looks like I can click through this. Do you reckon I should just click through this and we just talk through? Um, okay, cool. Folks, can you see the AI in hiring report on the screen? You should be able to see it right there. This is the research that Greenhouse has conducted. And I just want to go through a few of the main points. It's very well sort of segmented for us in terms of what the main things are going to be. So let me see if I can increase the size of screen. Let's go fill. Yeah, you can see the report, not large. That's okay. I think this is it. All right. Thank you, Michael. Everyone can see it. Good stuff. First things first, recruiter workload is rising as early stage screening is under pressure. Yeah, where can you see it, Luana? I've actually shared it on the link, sort of on the chat stream there. You can also go to Crowdcast, sort of Greenhouse's website, and download. But I think other people might be able to share it with you as well. So firstly, recruiter workload is rising. What's driven this, Mary Kay? I guess number one, we see sort of a surge of applications,
Yeah.
both from highly motivated job seekers, AI-enabled job seekers, but also the case that probably TA teams have been a bit denuded over the last couple of years. Isn't that also a factor?
I think it's all of the above, frankly. When hiring started to slow, companies cut well back on their recruiting teams, and they were doing that based on historical assumptions about what workloads were appropriate, right? And then we started to see this a massive increase in the number of applications being driven by bots, and people are using AI tools, and hey, good on them. I don't blame them at all. But really, those two things collided, and so now recruiting teams that are underscaled are really drowning in workloads. They're really drowning in applications. Even if their requisition workload is at a reasonable level, the volume of candidates per requisition is much higher. And so it's making it really, really hard to sift all of that. And we're seeing lower quality applications because it takes so little effort for people to just mass apply to things, because the bots will do it for you. You can just send out, hundreds of applications a day if you want to. That, the quality of the candidates is not necessarily actually working well for recruiting teams.
There's that intent problem, isn't there, where you
Yeah.
might it look like a good candidate, but you contact the candidate and they may say, "Yeah, well, what job is this again?"
Right, exactly. I literally just had that happen. I'm hiring for my team right now, and I just had that happen. Somebody I contacted a candidate like, which job is this? They didn't know because it was actually an AI tool that had applied on their behalf.
Yeah, and Jung, initially I would have. Our instinct is to say, you know what? How dare that candidate? How poorly sort of prepped they are. They don't care about us. We immediately feel a little bit outraged. But I wonder whether we might just have to get used to that sense that we're going to end up contacting candidates that it was their bot or their agent that did the application. And in fact, they may not know about us or whatever. And does that mean we dismiss them as a candidate, or do we have to then rethink where we need to sell it again? Like we can't presume interest on the back of an application, which
Which
you can
sounds
see
weird,
that
but
person. Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's very disappointing part is you might find a candidate that fits all the skills and attributes for the role, and it's someone who didn't even know they applied. Um, and at the same time, you also have candidates who are using these bots because they are being ghosted or they feel like they were being ghosted by so many of their applications. And so there's this gap that I think that AI is trying to help recruiters solve. Um, just that top of funnel volume that they just can't get through. The other piece I'm hearing, Hung, is that recruiters are so inundated with volume that they're opening and closing jobs so quickly. And so, are you really able to find the right pool or the top talent that you're looking for that role when you've received 1,000 applications in 2 hours?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what I've called the peekaboo job ad. Where you flash it up, but you've got your finger on the push back to draft button,
That's
because
right.
that could it could get out of control within a day,
yeah.
and people are starting to think, and then of course you can understand that sort of that's the approach that you take. But there's two problems with this. Obviously, there's a massive inclusion issue here with
Mhm.
regards to, does it make sense to simply look at the first people that are applying? And secondly, the problem is that the people that are applying first are likely to be the ones that have got automated stuff watching it. So
Right.
you might actually be focusing like if you're like the person who applies on day 14 is more likely to be a human being than the person applying in the first hour. And so the technique that you're trying to use to solve your applicant flow problem might actually end up sort of you having to deal with a lot of the automated candidates that perhaps you initially wanted to not deal with. Mary Kay, honestly, is that a technique you've used in your business, like just out of necessity, where you thought, you know what, we can't stick this up for 30 days. We have to just cut down the amount of time. Maybe it's a programmatic advertising type solution where you top out the number of applications before you take the job ad down, or have you simply said to the team, you know what, we've got to get it up there for 40 hours and that's it?
Yeah, we actually in the US at least, we're an affirmative action employer, so we have minimum posting timeframes. It's a compliance issue if we don't post for a minimum period of time. But we are seeing that initially there is a sort of flood of applications coming in the first 48 hours, and then it does slow down. So, we're unposting roles after the sort of minimum time frame. But then we also have more taken an approach of, okay, for some roles, we also need to pair that with more proactive sourcing of really targeted candidate outreach, because we can't count on getting, highly qualified and engaged candidates applying to the job. You know, for example, we work in the office 4 days a week, And we're really clear in our postings about that. And we're really clear about where the offices are located. And then we still get, up to 30% of our candidates applying from completely different locations. They don't live anywhere near the office. They're across the country, or they're even in a different country. So, those are AI problems. So I think you have to take a multifaceted approach to try to deal with the incoming applications. You have to have screening questions in place that help automatically disposition candidates based on, minimum qualification kind of factors. You have to be really focused in your job posting content, right? Because the bots will learn and pick up on some of those things over time if they're trained. And then you also have to find that balance between proactive sourcing and sifting through the applications that you're getting from candidates.
Yeah,
All
really,
right.
really good. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask Mary Kay how her team handles that 30% when you've got a
Mm,
basic requirement about location. How do they
yeah,
determine that that 30% is not where they say they are?
yeah. So it's not that they're not where they say they are. We're saying, the job is in Chicago. You live in North Carolina and you're applying from North Carolina for the job. So our approach is to email that person and say, sorry, but this job is in Chicago. We don't offer any kind of relocation assistance, etc. If you think we got this wrong, you can email us back. So most people, they don't bother following up on that because they never intended to work in Chicago anyway,
Hmm.
or it was a bot applying, right? Every once in a while, maybe less than 1% of the time, somebody will email back and say, "Hey, I recognize that, but I'm actually in the process of moving to Chicago, and so I really am a genuine interested candidate."
Yeah. So I think an automated response. I mean, here again, one of the ironies is that the only way to deal with this deluge, this AI powered deluge to a large degree, is to also use artificial intelligence that help with the screening, and then of course. On the other side, they would use more AI to get past that, and this is the AI adoption flywheel. So in many respects, we can see that that the system is just transitioning into a new way of working, where kind of we might get used to the idea that AI mediation is going to be the main way in which we're going to discover information going forward, and all of the problems we have today. And the stresses we have today are part of this sort of transition to this new way of working. But yeah, some lo-fi stuff, knockout questions,
Right?
switch to
Tell people why you're
sourcing.
rejecting them. Also, just tell people why and give them a way to let you know if you got it wrong.
Right, because if they're real and genuine, they're going to want to come back, and that gives them an option. Maybe some quieter ways to do recruitment. Again, this returns to sourcing to a large degree. Sourcing at one point was perceived to say, okay, it's all over because AI agents can do this or whatever it might be. But perhaps more companies will do sourcing because it's a quieter way of doing it. Referrals, all this non-advertising stuff may become a bigger slice of the pie. But John, going back to you, what is the ATS is doing on this? Because I'm sure you guys have had like huge demand from customers to say, you know what, great that you've got all of these like amazing tools, but we need help. We need help on the top of funnel. What kind of response has companies like Greenhouse sort of mounted on this?
I mean, Greenhouse has been working on this for at least 12 months around a real talent product that deals with the top of funnel, not just with talent matching. So thinking about the skills and attributes that a hiring manager or recruiter might set for a role, but also top of funnel fraud and spam. and being able to take all of that control into a recruiter's hands. For example, with respect to spam in one of those bots, if your company is inundated from a particular domain or even a particular email address, you're able to put that on a block list. So you're not constantly getting pinged by an individual who might be using an email to apply to thousands of jobs, or might even have a bot that um, makes derivatives of that email for thousands of jobs. And just giving a recruiter or hiring manager control over that and putting someone on a spam block list. And if you are wrong and someone comes back to you and says this is really legit, you have the ability to take that off. That's kind of a spam feature that Greenhouse has released this year. There's also a fraud concept where I think a lot of people at the top of funnel are worried about misrepresentation. Is this even a real individual? Is this a threat actor that's trying to access critical information in my company? Particularly if you're looking at every company has a secret recipe or a crown jewel. And whether you're protecting the recipe for Coke, or whether you're a security company or a cybersecurity company working with very precious source code, there will be threat actors, and we've seen it here in the US in particular, that lots of bad actors are trying to get access to. So fraud is really important as well. I think with AI, you're seeing lots of companies struggle with that volume at top of funnel. And
Yeah.
so, go ahead.
Really good, Jung. Especially on it's kind of the basic use of techniques to deal with the inundation. Like we've had spam filters for a long time, so now we're
Mhm.
seeing this type of technique into the ATS. Stephen Rothberg in the chat has made a very valid comment. I think this is, let's just read this out. If Greenhouse blocks an email due to suspected spam, how does the candidate get notified about that? And how can they come back if they get unblocked if their email has been blocked? So I think that's a really interesting question. I'm not sure whether sort of there's a policy position on that, Jung. Can you comment on?
I think the the being put on a spam or block list is a company or hiring manager choice. So if they notice that they're getting ghosted from a particular company that they're very high intent on a particular role, I think they'd have to reach out separately to that hiring manager or to that company directly, because Greenhouse doesn't itself puts an individual or a domain on a spam block list. It would be the individual hiring manager, recruiter, or someone who has that admin access in the GHR system.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting philosophical question as well, isn't it?
Mhm.
Like, let's say someone is using a mass apply tool,
Mhm.
like I don't know, is that necessarily a bad thing? Like, if that individual is actually relevant to, let's say, a lot of jobs, maybe it's a company that perhaps this person is super flexible, will relocate to anywhere, perhaps it's a junior entry level role, and they've just done a mass application to every single available job out there, probably because they're very motivated to get a job. Then blasting that person off, it seems like, okay, maybe we're overly penalizing sort of someone who's just enthusiastic and maybe a little bit more technically enabled than others. But I don't have the answer
Yeah.
to that, because it is a case where we feel that every application has less intent, right? Maybe we can interpret that person as having a lack of care or motivation for every
Mm.
job in particular. Yes, very interesting. Go ahead.
I was just thinking one of the things we can distinguish is the difference between a spam candidate and perhaps someone who might be flagged as a fraudulent candidate.
Right.
Right. A fraudulent candidate could be flagged for lots of different reasons that could be actually legitimate. And so let's say you've got, fraud signal that an email address is new, or an email address might not match what is historically on the resume. Let's say they've got an IP address that they're using that is routed through an employer. So there are some employers that require use of a VoIP if you're using, within the four walls of their offices. And so one of the things that you can do with fraud is actually view the whole fraud report. So all the signals, and then someone can decide for themselves whether this is truly a high fraud security concern, or whether this is something like, this is something my organization thinks is okay. So when you're saying, like, does a candidate have the ability to dispute or say, hey, this is really me and I'm interested in the role? I think giving a company the ability to see that whole fraud report is important.
Yeah, that's right. And I think sort of every ATS is going to have some sort of feature of this type. I mean, I've seen it even with every, I've seen it with sourcing tools, I've seen it with advertising tools. Almost the entire tech ecosystem in recruitment is aware that sort of fraud is a problem, and they're
Mhm.
implementing techniques sort of to mitigate against that. So some a credit needs to go to the vendors who are applying and investing into solutions that we, the audience, are demanding. But it is producing sort of interesting situations where the edge cases sometimes can be morally difficult, and it's not clear
Mhm.
what the right answer is at times. But we're all sort of cracking through as best we can. Jung, staying with you on this, I love that we're getting into this kind of taxonomy of different fraud types. I think this is an advancement on the discourse. Where on one hand we have AI usage by candidates that we all think is legit. And then we have on the other end of the spectrum, as you say, a threat actor who is applying with malevolent intent, or at least criminal intent, on the other side. And then we've got all shades of gray in between. How is sort of what's your view on how we deal with that? Do we need to have like very clear taxonomy as to what category of fraud that this is, and then we could have a policy against a particular type of fraud or a particular type of use of AI once we've categorized it?
Yeah, Pang, I actually think all those shades of gray are very important, because you could have a different choice with respect to a particular role. So you might say, for a security engineer at a cybersecurity company, you want to make sure that there are no fraud signals at all. There's, email addresses match, IP addresses match, phone numbers, all of that match. But you might have a different role where you're willing to say, hey, listen, I understand that this individual might have a personal email that they use for job applications that might not match their personal email that they've historically used for their whole life. And so having the ability to be transparent and seeing what those fraud signals are, and being able to make that determination in terms of which shade of gray is appropriate for the role and the company that is hiring, I think is going to be important, because I think it's not going to be black and white. Not everyone's going to be a threat actor and clearly someone you want to exclude. I think there's all those shades of gray are very important.
Yeah, and Mary Kay, going to you as
Mhm.
as an employer, as you mentioned, an inclusive employer at Morningstar. How have you wrestled with this? Because
Yeah.
yes, we need to mitigate against fraud, but a lot of the techniques, fraud signals, so to say, that we
Mhm.
that we were picking up, oftentimes can lead to kind of like profiling, right? It's like, oh,
Sure.
this person's name is not quite what it is in their government ID, therefore that's a signal. Well, guess what? There's a lot of people that actually might have names that are not tightly exactly as described on their government ID. What if someone has moved around? They're an immigrant, let's say, moved to a different country, and suddenly that's probably a fraud signal of some type, right? How do you handle that? How do you avoid personal profiling, or do we just need to accept that?
I think that you have to be cautious with that, right? You need to have sort of the preponderance of evidence. You need to have multiple signals that you can rely on. And so there is no single formula. And I think there are different levels of threat in different geographies as well. And so, one of the things that we do at Morningstar is nobody gets a job offer unless they have come in and interviewed in person with us. We really want people in working in our offices. We don't really hire people to work remotely. That's a very rare thing. And so it is, you know, absolutely we're validating throughout the process that the person who applied is the person that we're talking to. So video interviews followed by in-person interviews, to ensure that things are accurate, real. We're getting the same person on video that we are in person, all of those kind of signals. Don't get me wrong, people will go out and hire somebody to get through the interview process and get the offer, and then the person who shows up at work is not that candidate. It is a real problem, and it's a crime, right? That type of impersonation. But that is exceedingly rare, and the more common stuff is the online stuff. And so blocking people is something that is most applicant tracking systems can do, Greenhouse can do. um, you know you just have to be careful that you're making sure that you have enough weighty evidence to take that kind of an action, I think.
Yeah, very interesting. And I think, by the way, folks, this is all as a result of the broader global macro, right? Less job opportunities for everyone, increased economic precarity, an increased sense of competition, and if people are going to pull out the stops. I got a lot of like recruiter friends out in India, and India is historically been one of those countries that has a
Yeah.
massive oversupply of labor. And a lot of the sort of activities or behaviors we're seeing today, Indian recruiters have been dealing with for a long time. Like, for
Forever. Yeah.
instance, the
Yep.
idea of someone not impersonating. There's actually a mini profession of people that are
Hmm.
interview converters,
That's right.
Yep.
where you go forward to convert the interview, and then someone else comes in to do the job. And yeah, that's like a mini gray area market. So yeah, I mean, our Indian friends in the recruitment industry, I think, could give us a lot of insight in terms of how you handle this. And yeah, the in-person sort of angle is definitely something that is probably the key security factor, I would say. Okay, let's go forward on this. Actually, before as I click through this, Jung, what else is happening in the sort of the ID verification side for Greenhouse? Because sort of some interesting sort of measures that you've done on the product side there to again support companies, hasn't there?
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention to Mary Kay is the ID verification along the way, I think is very important. What we are seeing is not only are people requiring an ID verification at the beginning of the process, sometimes some companies are requiring it at every step of the process, at every interview, and it's beyond. It's not an ID verification. I think maybe 6 or 9 months ago, there was a phase where people were like, you wave your hand or you try and indicate that it's a real person that you're interviewing and not a deep fake. But I think it's gotten a lot more sophisticated than that. I mean, we have right now partnered with Clear, and customers can choose to send an ID verification before a critical stage in the process, where an individual, if they have a government ID and a selfie, and we make sure that those match, and the way that the data transfers, that is all remains with Clear. Greenhouse will receive the verification result, whether it's a pass or fail. And a hiring manager, a recruiter can see if it's a fail, what was the issue. We worry about bias creeping into that ID verification process, not just for someone who might have had a recent name change, which can happen sometimes. If a person gets married, a person can change their name for lots of different reasons, and we want to make sure that there's transparency into why someone might not have passed a Clear verification. So ID verification, I think, depending on the role and the company, people are requiring that. And I think candidates are now getting used to an ID verification request for their interviewing process.
Yeah, and again, I'm a little bit of the school that candidates might just have to lump it a little bit. I mean, I know this is like sort of hard to hear maybe, but I'm reminded a little bit about how we, take flights these days. There's a lot of
Mhm.
securitization going on there. Most of us, I think, would be grateful for that security being there, given the risk of not doing so. And even though it's like, okay, a problem and not ideal, we don't live in an ideal world. So yeah, I think there is kind of some sort of needs to be made on the candidate side, that yes, some of the security stuff is going to be needed, and it could be parlayed into EB. You could say, hey, we take sort of fraud very seriously on both sides. We want to make sure everyone feels safe. I think an impressive and professionally executed ID verification process can actually be a strong kind of underlining of EB. So yeah, not all bad on this. Okay, moving on to hiring manager POV. Jung, I do love the fact that this survey kind of included different stakeholders in the recruiting process. So can you tell us a little bit about this segment where hiring managers seem to be working harder, but they seem to be very pro AI, it seems. What's the insight here?
What I love about hiring managers is they're the ones that are going to be working day to day with the role. And so being able to leverage AI to free up some time to develop those human connections and really understand and dig into the quality candidates that you want to select from is the benefit of using AI. So beyond the ability to the administrative side, I think what Mary Kay was talking about in the beginning, all the time that a hiring manager and a recruiter can save with AI is allowing them to spend more time protecting that quality candidate, identifying and sourcing and building those relationships and making sure that you are spending the time in the right way before you bring a critical hire on board. That hiring manager perspective in particular, I found fascinating because the stat in the report around only 20% bringing in IT and security was surprising to me, given the criticality and the volume and how much I think IT and security can help at that top of funnel and help leverage AI for hiring managers.
Yeah, very interesting. Mary Kay, are you of the opinion that hiring managers care more about quality than talent acquisition, given that the hiring managers are more proximate to the person that they're recruiting for? TA is hitting a number, right? Like, that's the main
Hmm.
way we're measured. Let's get that there. But hiring manager is like, okay, they're working within team. Like, there seems like more skin in the game. Maybe they care a bit more on quality. Is that an outrageous thing to say?
I don't think it's an outrageous thing to say. I will say that that is generally the perception in companies where recruiters are not acting as talent advisors, where they are not real partners to the business, or if the in sort of incentive system around talent acquisition has been built around speed over quality. It's one of the reasons why I think time to fill can be such a horrific metric when it's overemphasized and it's not balanced with other things. But ultimately, recruiters who really want to be effective and efficient care just as much as hiring managers about quality. Because if you don't get the right hire in the seat, you're just going to have to fill that job again. It's like you're creating even more work for yourself. You're creating, a poor reputation for yourself internally. You're building a bad brand for your function, for yourself as a recruiter if you don't care about quality. Quality is actually more efficient than volume. Quality is more as a focus is more efficient and builds your brand and your reputation.
And a lot of this comes down to how the head of function like measures performance of your recruiters, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Like,
Yeah,
if
what
you
gets measured gets managed.
Right. So if you're a TA, a sort of leader, and you've just rolled out, hey, we need to make these hires in this time frame, you're going to create incentives there that might suddenly sort of be disaligned to what the hiring managers are looking for. But if you're looking at things like, okay, hiring manager satisfaction on hires, after 30 days or something, or after 90 days or whatnot, something of that type, to try and get it closer to the quality of higher metric, then recruiters might sort of will align again in a different way. So yeah, here we go with this. Hiring managers see AI as a quality enabler, not just a speed tool. What do we mean by this, Jung?
I think hiring managers say that the quality of, I mean, one of the ways that I see hiring managers really leveraging AI is, and kind of combating the bias and the fear around AI, is making sure that assessments are done live. So Greenhouse has a practice, and I think lots of companies do, around take-home assessments, um, and then putting some guardrails around how people use AI in terms of take home assessments. I think people are now, as a hiring manager, thinking about more of a live session. And
Mhm.
so, thinking about how you engage with an individual in a role and understanding how they think, really interacting with them instead of relying on that time that they might spend at home doing a take home test with the assistance of AI, even going beyond the guidelines that you might want a candidate to use with AI in a take home assessment. Greenhouse put together some guidelines around our expectations for candidates and how they use AI to perhaps prepare for an interview, prepare for an assessment, but really that we're engaged and interested in the capability and the critical thinking that a hiring manager can do live with a candidate. So I see that as being an enabler as opposed to just speed.
Yeah, really good. And hasn't the take-home sort of assessment sort of been killed, folks? Like, is everyone still doing
Mhm.
those? I think it's gone, right? So we can basically write the epitaph on that. Once upon a time, it was the way in which, okay, we could assess people really on the candidate's time and not waste and not sort of expend resources on the recruiter's time or the hiring manager's time. Now, hiring managers need to actually invest more, and maybe they want to do that. And perhaps that's what we're looking at here, where we're talking about hiring manager sort of distribution of time over tasks. Jung, what's the data here telling us?
Sorry, which page are you focusing on? I can't.
Yeah, sorry. How hiring
Okay.
managers basically are spending their time. Like, I presume that means they're spending more time doing interviews, aren't they? Like, isn't everyone doing more interviews, more or less?
I think they are doing more interviews but they're doing interviews that matter. So I think they're spending more time doing interviews with candidates that they actually want to talk to, and hopefully having a larger selection at that point in time of good quality candidates. I spoke to an individual yesterday who said that they were actually not using the fraud spam feature of the Real Talent product yet. They were just using talent matching, and they were able to take thousands of people at the top of funnel and actually reduce that to 20 and talk to all 20 candidates. And this hiring manager was really excited about the quality and the time that he was able to spend evaluating, assessing, and building relationships with these 20 candidates. So I do believe that hiring managers are spending more time with interviewing, but hopefully they're seeing that in terms of quality.
That's actually a really interesting insight, because there was always that sort of worry that to do the sort of to do proper due diligence on every hire, it would just exhaust the hiring managers, because they'd
Mhm.
have to conduct like mega amount of interviews. Therefore, they'd do an optimal stop a bit earlier and say, look, we can't practically do that. We're going to just make do with this smaller group of people and just take the risk. But AI may potentially sort of reshape, if you like, how much time is available, and perhaps hiring managers will have no problem with interacting with sort of individuals, each of whom may be a valuable person to speak to in industry. Mary Kay, is that happening in Morningstar? Like, are you tracking that, or is that a general sense that you have, or is this more a case by case situation for different companies?
Well, I think it's a case by case situation at Morningstar in terms of, the type of role it is. Certainly for a lot of our higher level hiring, especially leadership hiring, we're seeing managers do a lot more initial conversations with candidates in the pipeline. So the recruiters will develop a slate of candidates. The managers will talk to them before we bring them in for in-person interviews. And I think that managers are willing to do that because of that relationship building aspect, but also because it is a quality focus. And then other roles where it's entry level hiring, it's very high volumes of candidates. We're using assessments, proctored assessments, at the top of the funnel, kind of doing assessment center kind of things, and then bringing people in for interviews later. So it really, the strategies have to be different. But true story, I have taken the old fashioned, we're going to do a take home case study or that type of thing, and just plugged it in to Copilot and had Copilot completed it and send it back to the manager within a minute and say, so this is how Copilot answered your questions and did your take home. You sure you want to keep doing this? Managers have been accustomed to doing it for so long that you really have to help sometimes open their eyes to how that's just not acceptable anymore.
Yeah, and I think it's true for almost every test, isn't it? Whether it's coding challenge, do a presentation, write a strategy, like all of this stuff can really, if your output is really a piece of digital stuff, it's going to be something that AI could definitely do in your stead. Let's move to this other sort of big population, Joan. We're talking about a candidate side being interviewed, which is a fantastic part of this. And this segment was really interesting. It looks like candidates are not necessarily hostile to employers using AI, but perhaps they're not clear on how it's being used, and maybe the transparency is not there, maybe communication isn't there. Can you tell us a bit more about this particular segment?
Yeah, I mean, candidates recognize that employers are using AI, but I think some of them are a little nervous and some of them are open. I think that transparency element that you mentioned, Hung, is really important. Um, and I know what Greenhouse does for candidates is they explain in every step of the way, whether it's through the administrative ease of sourcing emails, whether it's through resume parsing. They do give a lot of transparency in terms of to candidates how we use AI in our own recruiting processes. The other piece I think that lots of companies are doing now is they're giving candidates the option to opt out of the use of AI in their hiring process. I was with a group of TA leaders last night, and they said that even if they offer that opt out option for AI, very low number of candidates are opting out. So I think the
Yeah.
fact that candidates are open, as long as they do have some transparency into how it's being used in the process, I think it makes a lot of sense.
I've seen
What
this too, Jung. Actually, we when we're using an AI note taker for interviews, for example, we really don't see candidates declining to use it. So they have the option to opt out, but they're really not. So when I saw your report and the statistics on candidates acceptance of the employer AI use, I'm like, interesting, because I feel like this is what we're seeing in practice is an even higher acceptance rate. Maybe they just don't like it, but they're using it. They're letting us use it anyway.
Yeah, and we kind of know this. I'm pleased you mentioned on the note-taking example, Mary Kay,
Yeah.
because that was one of the very early critiques of when interview intelligence start to emerge 5 years or so ago. One of the very early pushbacks was, "Hey, listen, candidates aren't going to tolerate sort of this being interviewed and then being transcribed." And I remember speaking to some of the founders there, and they said, "Look, we're going to ask people whether they want to do it." And the way we're going to present it is to say, look, this is all about fairness, because we want to use it firstly to train hiring managers in order to be more fair in terms of how they do interviews. But secondly, we also want to mine the intelligence for any kind of sort of aberrant trends that might sort of tell us a little bit about how we're mishandling stuff. So
Absolutely.
basically, you can describe the use of AI in these terms and genuinely mean it, and the take up, as you mentioned, Mary Kay, was very, very high. So yeah, maybe we're at that point as well. Okay, is an interesting sort of finding here, Jung. Disclosure shapes whether AI feels acceptable. So I guess if you kind of like rug pull someone, and you put them through a process, and then you do like a big reveal to say, oh, our AI has said this, then yeah, maybe they're going to be outraged. But if you kind of said at the get go, look, here is our recruiting process. And here is where AI is coming in, and this is what AI does in these particular moments. Then it seems candidates can kind of roll with it. Is my understanding of that sort of insight correct?
I think that's right. And in fact, I think in the GHR product, we actually provide an AI notice template so that a hiring manager can decide, like, hey, Greenhouse is saying that transparency and explainability and giving notices to candidates is really important. Here's a template you can start with. Let's make sure it's provided to candidates so that they know that these are the places and the places and the steps in the process where AI is being used by this company. I think as long as candidates have that transparency, and the more detail is even better. So, is it done at resume parsing? Is it done at the skill and attribute level? If you've got some knockout questions in terms of location or ability to come into Chicago 4 days a week, I think that is really important, and the ability to kind of check back. So most companies will have the option that says, "Hey, this AI result doesn't feel right to me. Let's go back and have an appeal process or a review process." And I think lots of companies have that option.
Yeah, very good. Sinead and Stephen, I do appreciate your comments. I think it's a valid issue as well. Like, is it? I'll just read Sinead's comment here.
Mm.
Candidates not wanting to opt out as they may be afraid of being tagged as troublesome. I think that's a legitimate question, something to debate. Because is there a sense that if I say no, I check the box, I'm not into it, that I won't then get a fair shot or I won't get processed? Yeah, I think that's a legitimate question. And that's actually, as I recall, like one of the ways in which the AI assessment sort of category has presented the use of AI is exactly to accelerate or expedite that individual's application. So some companies have been much more explicit about that and say, yes, actually, if you do opt out, you're going to be back a queue. But no, if you do opt in, we can move you faster, which is basically correct, because the purpose of AI is to increase the efficiency. Anyway, stuff we can't resolve right here and now. Let's move on real here. Okay. Candidates turn to AI to keep pace with progress. We all know this is true. This is the AI kind of flywheel, the AI adoption flywheel, the sort of evolutionary arms race, so to say. What's our take here on it, Mary Kay and Jung? Can we like forecast 12 months down the track? Do we just accept it's going to fly faster, basically? Like we're never going to come to an equilibrium. It's just, this is evolution. We just have to roll with it.
I think back to earlier in my career when the internet was new and we moved from like paper applications to online applications. I think it felt like at the time, an arms race, and suddenly like we had so many more candidates because people could apply online instead of having to take the time to type up a cover letter and fax it to somebody. I really think that we will come to an equilibrium, but right now it can feel a little bit like an arms race where nobody's winning.
Yeah. How about you, June? What are your thoughts?
I was just thinking about Mary Kay. I remember when that internet was new too, but yet the time it took for that to become ubiquitous, I feel like is a lot longer
A
than
lot
it
longer.
has because AI is moving so quickly. I think about the difference between 6 months ago to what we have today, and then what we'll have. Hung, you mentioned 12 months. I think even in 6 months, the gap, that trust gap between candidates and employers, I think is going to narrow. I think companies that are looking at ATSs are demanding more transparency, more clarity, and accountability for their algorithms and bias mitigation. And so, as the importance of those issues come up, I think there is a lot of differentiation that can be made among ATS tools. And so I do hope that that trust gap narrows, so
Yeah.
that there's go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I mean, it may get to the point where sort of the employer use of an ATS might be significant to their own sort of employer brand, right? So,
A
for
hundred
instance,
percent.
if you're we all know that's true. I mean, basically, some of
Yeah.
the enterprisey type ATSs that have given terrible high friction to experience, that obviously rolls back. And there's another sort of point here coming to the end of this report. Candidates are forming opinions of employers based on how visible and understandable AI use is during sort of evaluation. So I think the message is clear. You got to tell people what it is you're using AI for, and how it is you're gonna, what the function really is. So I guess the final point of it is this, isn't it? We have to lead with the transparency of it. You have to explain your process, describe it for all of the candidates, and then offer an opt-in. What are our final thoughts on this, for people listening in, and they're thinking, okay, AI is everywhere now in hiring. How do we sort of the one step we want to take to make sure? How do you even get to become more transparent? Is it, how do you even do that? Mary Kay, any thoughts?
I think it does actually go back to old, just really basic, old fashioned. How are you writing your email templates for candidates? You can be transparent about why you're rejecting people and what your process is and what they can expect from you. I think I will say, like, there should be open disclosure on your career site about how exactly you're using AI. If you're going to invite somebody to an interview, well, you're going to use an AI note taker. They should see that before they accept the invitation to the interview. The more you tell people, the more you build trust. This is just, basic stuff. I also think that we're going to be watching, and to Sinead's point, we're going to be watching what happens in the legal landscape. I think that things like the connection between Fair Credit Reporting Act and how AI tools are sifting candidates is going to be really interesting. And I'm watching that one carefully, because I think that could be the future state, is really just making sure that employers who are using AI tools are just forced to be super transparent about it. So if you're rolling out these tools, just do that up front, and it won't be hard to either build trust or, frankly, to comply with the laws in the future.
Yeah, really interesting. By the way, that case is obviously rolling through the courts right now. Worth keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
Jung, what are your thoughts? Your final sort of takeaway from all of this?
No, I would say that it's not just transparency to candidates from an ATS vendor for employers. It's important that we are transparent in how we built the product. How are we doing bias mitigation, making sure our audits are publicly available and they're done on a frequent basis. Because the legal theories are changing. We're going beyond disparate impact, which is people have found to be a very difficult case to prove, to this Fair Credit Reporting Act regime, which is a novel legal theory. Um, Hopefully, it'll make its way through the courts, but I think my guess is it'll take several years, just like the Workday cases. But it just shows you the scrutiny around the AI is critical, and new legal theories will evolve. So I would encourage folks to ask lots of questions and demand transparency, and explainability for their any AI tools that they adopt.
Yeah, it's going to be more work for vendors, but that's all good.
All
More
good.
demanding customers should mean better software at the end of the day. Okay, that's about it. Thank you so much, Jung, for coming out onto the show and guiding us through the AI and hiring report. That will be available, obviously, to everyone in the who's registered for the show. Mary Kay Baldino, thank you so much for joining me and helping me sort of with the questions. It's been great having you both on the show. Let me let you both go. I hope you have a very good weekend. I don't even know how to do that anymore on this. Do I move the gallery? Okay, I'm going to try and press this
All
button,
right.
Jung. I don't know what's going to happen, okay?
All right.
Cross fingers.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, there we go. I think that seems to work. Gallery's empty. Okay, folks, that's it. Thank you so much for watching with us. I hope you were enlightened by it and you enjoyed that conversation. I do endorse having a look at the report. I'll whip out the document for you all to consume. We'll be back next week. I'm going to be in sunny South Africa. Not so sunny South Africa. It's raining again over there. So I think I'm carrying the rain with me to Cape Town. I'm going to be attending a wonderful event called Recruiters Unite next week, where I'll be giving a talk to the recruiter community out in Cape Town. And we'll be doing 2 shows whilst I'm there. So how to hire in South Africa in 2026. That's happening, I think, on Wednesday next week. Or it could be Tuesday, Wednesday, one of the 2 days, 3rd of March as it is. And then on Friday, again, live from Cape Town, we'll be talking about recruitment advertising benchmark report, another report breakdown, this time from our friends at Jovio. They have done a mega report on all of the ads that's been posted via their technology. And we're going to learn about stuff like, okay, what is the click-through rate if you're hiring for a nurse in Johannesburg or something. What kind of words do you need to put in there to make sure you're getting the right quality of applicants going through? So that's basically what we're going to be doing. Make sure you follow the channel if you're interested in those topics or just in general case discussion of talent acquisition stuff. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, navigate to my profile and just follow my profile there. I live stream on LinkedIn every week as soon as we go live in Crowdcast, so you can watch it there as well. Okay, that's about it. Thanks for watching.